Hey, everybody, welcome back to another Motivation Monday podcast for Monday, February 5th, 2018. So, this is going to be somewhat of a controversial episode. I absolutely know it because I'm going to be speaking about a topic that is near and dear to a lot of people's hearts and something that people get very territorial over, and that is sports. So, just a note here. I am from New England. I'm born and raised, still live in New England. So obviously, I'm a Patriots fan, right? And another note, I'm recording this on Friday, February 2nd. So by the time this comes out, we will know who has won the Super Bowl. But I do not know. And to tell you the truth, I don't really care who wins the Super Bowl. It has no bearing on what I'm talking about for this Motivation Monday podcast. So, what I wanted to talk about was just the greatness that I see in terms of the Bill Belichick and Tom Brady combo that has been with us for the past about 17 years here. Um, and I think it's undeniable. Now, I know I'm going to get a lot of Patriot haters out there saying, well, they cheated, blah, 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 all this stuff. Let's put all that aside for right now. And let's just honestly say how amazing these two men are that have taken this team to be one of the greatest dynasties in sports history. And the reason why I'm bringing this up on a music podcast is that I'm a huge sports fan and I tend to draw a lot of parallels between sports and music, both with the teamwork aspect of it and also with the sheer amount of drive and will and practice that it takes to become great at either one of these disciplines. Now, we all know there are very, very gifted athletes, right? And we also know that there are very, very gifted musicians, but the difference between those people that get to the top and the ones who don't is the amount of work that they're willing to put in to get to the top of their field, right? So I've been watching these little documentaries, Tom Against Time, and they're pretty good. I actually really enjoy getting in a little bit of a glimpse into his life and some of the stuff that he's done to prolong his career and be one of the greatest athletes that the world has ever known. So it's really interesting to think about this in terms of a musician versus somebody like Tom Brady or Bill Belichick. Now, if you've watched this Tom versus Time or follow sports at all, you know exactly how much time and effort both of those guys put into their craft of football. I mean, if you look at the amount of time they spend watching film alone, it is hours and hours and hours and hours a week. Now, if you were to think about the greatest musicians that the world has ever known, you can guarantee that they have put hours and hours and hours and hours a week in every single week for their entire lives. And that just comes from sort of an insatiable drive to be one of the greatest who's ever lived. And I think that some of our musical heroes and some of our sports heroes, they share that, right? So a basketball player who stays after practice and takes 200 extra shots, you can compare that to the musician who, long after everybody has gone home and gone to bed, they're still in a practice room trying to figure out what the sound that they're going for. Now, another thing that I think is really important to talk about that is a characteristics of the greats in both sports and music is that they're never ever satisfied. You know, even if you consider them to be on the top of the mountain, they still feel like they have plenty more mountains to climb, right? So if you think about Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, I mean, they got 5 rings together, right? They should be happy with that. They should be saying, wow, well, I could just retire right now, ride off into the sunset, and I'll be remembered as one of the greatest athletes that was part of the greatest sports dynasty ever in history. But they're not satisfied with that. They want more. They want to keep getting better. They want to keep exploring their craft. They want to keep reaching for new heights. So if we compare that to somebody like, let's say, Joe Lovano or Chris Potter, I mean, those guys, they know more about music than probably the rest of us put together. But guess what they're doing every day? They're picking up their instrument and they're striving for more. They're striving to be better. The quest never ever ends. You know, I've told that story about James Moody in his mid 80s, still practicing every day for hours and hours and hours. It's just an insatiable drive to get better. There's always something we can get better at, no matter how good we are at something. So let's think about one other person that I think is perhaps the greatest example of this in history when it comes to music, John Coltrane. So if you think about John Coltrane, after he came out with Giant Steps, that could have been it for him. I mean, he changed the face of music. He wrote music and played the saxophone like nobody had ever heard before. He could have just kind of been done, but that wasn't in his nature. He was always pushing for a new sound, a new way of doing things, a new way to express himself on his instrument and through composition. I think he's probably the best musical example of that. And if he were still alive today, I guarantee you we would have heard some of the craziest stuff that we've ever heard from him. Because you know what? He would have kept continuously growing and becoming a different musician and putting out different sounding records and never really resting on the stuff he had already done. That just wasn't in his nature. So I think that's another real parallel that we can draw. And something, me being a Patriots fan, something that I derive a lot of inspiration from is, somebody like Bill Belichick, who's on top of the world, has more money than anybody, has more championships than most, is respected kind of the world over as one of the greatest coaches in history. Guess what he does every morning? He wakes up and he gets to work. He goes back and tries to get better at his craft. So like I said, I know there's probably a lot of mixed feelings out there. I know there's probably a lot of people who actually hate the Patriots, think they're a bunch of cheaters, think that all, whatever. But I think that you can't deny that in there is greatness in these two men. And I think you also can't deny that there's a lot of musicians out there that are really, really fantastic. Some would even call them masters, and they still wake up every morning and get to work. So that should be inspiring to you. You can either let that defeat you, that there's somebody out there that is so much better than you, or you can let that inspire you. Let's make sure that we choose the inspiration route instead of the defeat route and realize that, yeah, we may never be as good as those people. Maybe they got started younger than us. Maybe they have more free time than us, whatever. But we can always strive to be better than we are today. We can always strive to be better tomorrow. All right. So, like I said, I have no idea whether the Patriots have won the Super Bowl or not, but I think that regardless of whether they win this sixth one, I think you can honestly call them one of the greatest dynasties in history. And you can say that Bill Belichick and Tom Brady are two of the most dedicated people in their field. All right. So let's try to be more like them and let's get to it this week. Let's get over our Super Bowl hangover and let's get on our instruments and get things going. All right. Go Pats. I had to slip that one in there. I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a great week. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.